Imagine a family so rich, so powerful, that their money quietly shapes nearly every part of your life, and you've probably never even seen their faces. They don't throw Met Galas. They don't own a social media empire. They don't sit courtside next to Drake. Instead, they own the pipes under your city, the chemicals in your packaging, the fertilizer on your food, and even the political machine whispering in your senator's ear. This is the story of the Koch family. And it's not just a story about money, it's about power. Silent, relentless, generational. Koch Industries is one of the largest privately held companies in the world. Bigger than FedEx, bigger than Nike. And unlike Amazon or Tesla, they've managed to build this empire without the scrutiny of the public markets. No quarterly calls, no shareholder drama, just cash, power, and control. It started with Fred Koch, an oil engineer who helped build refineries in Stalin's Soviet Union before bringing his know-how back to America. But Fred wasn't just a businessman. He was also a radical ideologue who feared communism, despised government regulation, and believed America was on the brink of collapse. So he raised 4 sons, Charles, David, William, and Frederick, not just to run a business, but to wage a war against taxes, against environmental regulation, against anything that slowed down profit. But only 2 would truly rise to power, Charles and David Koch. Charles became the mastermind, the architect, the man behind the curtain. David, the polished frontman, smiling, campaigning, and writing the checks. Together, they didn't just grow the family business. They turned Koch Industries into a $100+ billion titan of oil, chemicals, paper, agriculture, and more. And along the way, they became some of the most influential political donors in modern history. Forget lobbying. These guys rewrote the playbook. They funded think tanks, built grassroots movements, supported legislation, all from the shadows. Their goal wasn't to win one election. It was to shape American policy for decades. And it worked. But how did they do it? How did this one family quietly build a financial and political empire without most Americans even knowing their name? Let's rewind. This story gets wild. The year is 1967. Fred Koch is dead. The empire is up for grabs. What follows is a brutal war between the 4 brothers. A civil war inside one of the richest families in America. Frederick, the oldest, wants out. William, the flashy one, wants control. But Charles? Charles has a different vision. Quiet. Long-term. Ruthless. He locks down shares, consolidates power, forces his brothers out, even hires private investigators to dig up dirt on them. It's messy. It's personal. It's billionaires throwing punches in courtrooms and boardrooms. By the early 1980s, Charles and David emerge as the last men standing. And now they go to work. Under their leadership, Koch Industries becomes a beast. Oil pipelines stretching thousands of miles, fertilizer plants, paper mills, trading arms that move billions in commodities. At one point, they even owned brands you'd recognize, like Dixie Cups and Lycra. But they never wanted to be a household name. That was the point. Koch Industries operated in the shadows, privately held. No public filings, no Wall Street pressure, just growth. Quiet, monstrous growth. But the real genius wasn't just business. It was ideology. Charles Koch believed in market-based everything, that government was the enemy. That regulation killed innovation. So he built an empire not just of assets, but of influence. He poured money into libertarian think tanks like the Cato Institute, backed scholars, funded research, shaped the conversation long before the first campaign dollar was ever spent. By the 1990s, the Koch network was a machine. It could swing elections, shape public opinion, and outspend political parties, all without ever putting their name on a ballot. They didn't care about the credit, just the outcome. And their timing was perfect. As America moved into the 2000s, polarized, deregulated, and desperate for money, the Kochs were ready. With billions in their war chest and a blueprint for control, they became kingmakers. Not with tweets or TikToks, but with infrastructure, influence, invisible power. While Silicon Valley chased fame, the Kochs chased leverage. And they got it. But just how deep did their reach go? And at what cost? Let's keep going, because the next part might change how you see modern democracy. By the time Barack Obama was elected president, the Kochs were already 10 steps ahead. Healthcare reform? Climate policy? Financial regulation? To most Americans, these were political issues. But to the Kochs, they were threats. To their business, to their ideology, and to their grip on influence. And so they responded with one of the most effective political networks in American history. We're talking hundreds of millions of dollars, funneled through nonprofits, super PACs, and donor networks so complex they made Wall Street look like child's play. Their political operation became known as the Kochtopus. It wasn't just money, it was strategy. They trained local activists, funded primary challengers, even created their own data companies to rival the RNC. They didn't just support the Republican Party, they built an entirely separate infrastructure. And it worked. In 2010, the Tea Party wave swept through Congress. Many of those candidates backed directly or indirectly by Koch-funded groups. Regulations were slashed. Environmental protections rolled back. The government shrank, just like the Kochs wanted. And all of it happened without a single Koch name on a campaign sign. Meanwhile, Koch Industries kept growing. They expanded into chemicals, software, electronics, even bought Georgia Pacific, the maker of brawny paper towels and quilted northern toilet paper. Quietly, they became one of the largest privately held companies in the world, worth over $100 billion. Still, no IPO, no earnings calls, no corporate Twitter account. They didn't need attention. They had control. But here's where it gets even crazier. Their influence went global. They lobbied governments, funded foreign think tanks, leveraged their reach to influence trade policy, labor law, and energy markets around the world, all from behind the scenes. And yet, if you stopped someone on the street and asked, "Who are the Koch brothers?" most wouldn't have a clue, because power likes to stay quiet. It doesn't need to trend on XI, it doesn't want a Netflix doc. It just wants leverage. And the Kochs had it at a level most billionaires only dream of. But eventually, that power would be tested. Because you don't influence a country that deeply without making enemies. And the backlash was coming. By the mid-2010s, the Koch name finally broke into the mainstream, but not the way they wanted. Investigative reporters, documentaries, and even late-night comedians started asking, who are these guys pulling strings behind the scenes? The answer didn't come from conspiracy theories. It came from campaign finance records, leaked memos, and tax filings. Suddenly, America realized the Kochs weren't just rich, they were reshaping the country, and it hit hard. College protests erupted at Koch-funded campuses. Environmental groups launched national campaigns against their fossil fuel empire. Senators and governors were openly calling out their influence. Even other billionaires, like Trump, started attacking them. But here's the twist. The Kochs didn't flinch. They weren't in it for praise. They were in it for ideology, and Charles Koch doubled down. He poured even more into Stand Together, his rebranded philanthropic arm. The goal? To shift the narrative. From shady backroom operators to principled free market reformers. They funded education, criminal justice reform, and addiction recovery programs, all under the banner of individual liberty. And it worked. Partially. Their image got a polish. Their donations made headlines. But critics weren't buying it. Because while the branding changed, the money didn't stop. Their network still spent tens of millions backing candidates, ballot initiatives, and think tanks that supported their vision of a deregulated America. And the influence? Still massive. They helped kill carbon tax proposals, fought off net neutrality rules, blocked Medicaid expansions in multiple states. Every time a policy threatened their business, or their worldview, the Kochtopus flexed. And behind the scenes, Charles Koch started to consolidate. David Koch, his younger brother and longtime partner, stepped away due to illness. In 2019, he passed away, ending one of the most iconic billionaire duos in American history. But the machine didn't stop. Charles took full control, and the empire kept growing, quieter than ever. This wasn't about being famous, it was about being effective. The Koch legacy wasn't just built on oil, chemicals, and paper towels. It was built on quiet domination across politics, business, and public opinion. And as the next chapter loomed, one question remained. What happens when an empire that powerful starts thinking about forever? Today, the Koch empire is at a crossroads, but not because it's shrinking, because it's evolving. Koch Industries still rakes in more than $125 billion a year. From oil and gas to ranching, finance, electronics, fertilizer, forest products, and even consumer brands you've seen in your house 100 times. But Charles Koch is 88, and he knows time is running out. So he's been preparing a transition, not just of wealth, but of power. His son, Chase Koch, is already stepping into the spotlight. He's younger, media-savvy, and way more focused on tech and social entrepreneurship than bare-knuckle politics. He's poured money into startups, AI, blockchain, education reform, and criminal justice projects that rebrand the family name without backing off the mission. But make no mistake, the values haven't changed, just the packaging. The new Koch playbook is about shaping the world without being seen. They're investing in data infrastructure, biotech, logistics, industries that don't grab headlines but control everything behind the scenes. Even in politics, they've learned the power of quiet. Rather than blasting ads, they fund grassroots organizers, ballot data firms, and litigation centers, all invisible to the average voter, but lethal at the polls. And that's the terrifying brilliance of it. While billionaires like Elon or Bezos chase attention, the Kochs chase leverage. They don't need your applause. They just need control, because if you own the pipes, you don't need to care what flows through them. Think about it. The average American doesn't know they're buying paper towels, gasoline, or electronics from a Koch-owned company. They don't know Koch Cash is shaping who runs their school board, what gets taught in classrooms, or what bills make it to a vote in Congress. That's not a conspiracy. That's strategy. And in an age where influence equals power, influence you don't see is the most dangerous kind. The Kochs built a kingdom in the shadows, not through fame, but through force, funding, and focus. They are the hidden hand, the billion-dollar ghost in the machine. And now that you've seen it, you'll start to notice them everywhere. This is Midnight Watch. Subscribe if you want more real stories about wealth, power, and the invisible empires pulling the strings. Next time, we're going deeper into the system that lets families like this run America while barely being seen. See you soon.